Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Thrive Co-Living Communities YouTube podcast. I'm Mark Stein, Thrive founder and your podcast host. We're creating sustainable, inclusive, and multi-generational residential communities. Our mission is to combat the epidemic of isolation, revitalize communities, and help others discover the many benefits of engaged community living by offering unique and ecologically sustainable co-living options. In this podcast series, join us as we discuss co-living, in addition to bringing you interesting people from around the world who are doing cool things to expand your knowledge and satisfy your curiosity. Through this podcast, learn more about our concept and see how Thrive co-living communities will bring together people from all walks of life who want to enjoy the best of independent and group living. To find out more about us, please visit our website at thrivecolivingcommunities.org. Thanks for watching and enjoy the podcast. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Thrive Co-Living Communities podcast. I'm your host, Mark Stein, and with me today, returning for a second time, is Harris Ambush. He works in the field of education, and I'm going to let him remind everybody what his focus is, what he's currently doing, a little bit of his background, and then we're going to talk about education and specifically a good bit about the promise and pitfalls of AI as it's entered the picture. We last met in 2020 for a podcast, so a lot has changed since then. Welcome back, Harris.
Thank you, Mark. Nice to be back. I appreciate the invitation. Yes, my name's Harris Ambush. I am in Florida, born and raised here. Background in holistic and health education with a master's and a doctorate focusing on those areas. Currently a instructor at USF St. Pete and also co-founder of radschools.org, an organization that helps to build new paradigms in education and community enrichment.
Great. Thank you for that summary and welcome back. So I'm really enthused about AI and use it a lot. I'm testing all the new apps that come out. I'm old enough to remember the first PC. It was a Texas Instrument 99. It was only a keyboard. It connected to a TV screen, and the hard drive was a cassette recorder. And all it would do is play Pong. So I've been a witness to the rise of technology, from the internet to web to mobile. And this is probably the most exciting period that I have lived through. It is the most exciting period. Ray Kurzweil, who actually started researching AI, I think I just saw a podcast with him. He did speech to text. You may recognize the name Kurzweil from speech to text, but he said that this is the most disruptive technology in human history. And from what I've seen so far, I believe it. So I'm really curious about how we're going to be able to harness AI. I feel like there's a lot of promise there. One of the things that I believe we know, and pardon my long-winded intro to this, but I think one of the things we know is that individual attention is one of the prime and key aspects of success for students. And that's one of the things that this is going to be able to provide. So talk a little bit about what your thoughts are at this point in time. And we're still really early, infancy in AI.
Yeah, everything. Well, for the common person, it's pretty new, right? For people developing this has been years, more so a decade in the making. So as this starts to become more of a societal norm, where it's going to be seen in pretty much every realm of work, education, and even personal life. I think one of the things with AI that we have to keep in mind is everything that is new in AI, it's kind of like a shiny new ball, but it's going to constantly be developing. You know, if you look at, say, in the year 2000, 40 years before that, the biggest and greatest, well, I won't say greatest, that's subjective, but the biggest invention of that era was the internet. The computer came before that, of course, but then when the internet came, that literally changed the world. It was able to connect people. Early on, people were able to use that for multiple areas, and now it's expanded and it's pretty much a daily part of our lives, even what we're doing now. Then you fast forward that and you look 10 years. So you look at 40 years, then you look at about, let's say, 20 years. So in the past 20 years, we've seen evolution of phones, right? So now you take the computer, you take the internet, and now you move it to something in your pocket. So that 40-year span cut in half by that 20-year span, we're going to see that cut in half again with AI, how quickly it develops and how quickly it advances. So we're looking at about a 5 to 10-year rate, in my opinion, about how quickly this will be in our daily lives, how quickly this, and it already is in our daily lives, but how quickly this will oversee pretty much a large portion of our work and personal life. So with that expansion and that time frame, and since it's already here, we are pretty much building the plane as we fly it right now. ChatGPT is a perfect example. People are playing with it, right? It's accessible. Most people, if they've tried it, can understand that it's fairly user-friendly. You asked for some of the pitfalls. One of the pitfalls is, while you're building this plane, while you're flying it, is policy and regulation. What the mistake was with the internet and some of the larger companies that you could say they're monopolies or not, there wasn't enough regulation, and I'm not a regulation guy. I think things need to expand and they need to break and you need to fix them and there needs to be different iterations. But we've seen what's happened with the internet with not as much regulations and with monopolies kind of holding them out, or really kind of they have the power of a certain few organizations that pretty much control a good portion of the internet and social media. With AI, what they're trying to do now is have those regulations a little bit more and those policies a little bit more in place, since they've learned from the mistakes. So as you're seeing this on a larger level, and we'll get to the education piece in a moment, but as you're seeing this on a larger level, you're really seeing the race for AI. 70 years ago, it was the race to space, right? Then it kind of became the race to manufacturing. Then it became the race to robotics, and it became the race to tech and computers and chips. So what do you think is going to happen now? It's obviously a huge race to AI. And you're seeing that play out right now, where every developed country is putting millions, if not billions. I know our country and some of the larger countries are putting billions of dollars into AI to try and get to this space quicker, and also in a way where it works for their country a little bit stronger than a global situation. You're seeing this now becoming a little bit more of a country focus instead of a globalization focus. And that's what's really interesting, I think, on the higher level of AI, is you're seeing countries specifically doing AI in their language so that it's not maybe used in an English language, or you're seeing it used with parameters. For example, China, their AI tech is actually still controlled by government quite a bit, to the fact where they still have, it's not an open system. It's actually still regulated in the sense that, and I shouldn't say regulated, it's managed in the sense where it's still only what the government wants you to see. And it's very
Censorship.
fascinating what's happening country by country with AI.
Hmm. One thing that's hopeful to me is that most of the major leaders are urging to put guardrails on this thing and to have not just government, but world uh, supervision and regulation. Similar, the parallels I hear most are of nuclear power and the need to regulate it at the international level so that it's not country by country.
Yeah.
Um, but I am pleasantly surprised and a bit optimistic that most of the leaders are really seem to grasp the dangers of this thing and not only urging regulation, but they don't seem to sugarcoat the dangers. And from Elon, who's really rings the bell, to Suskever and head of OpenAI, whose name is escaping me at the moment. Help me out, head of OpenAI and ChatGPT.
Yeah, I'm blanking on his name too, but I know he's come
Okay.
back to take it over.
Anyway, they're all urging caution, and I feel like they're using restraint too. For example, a friend of mine who's in IT security says that he suspects that the reason it's not that good in math is because it's very close to being able to break um, security and again, my words are not coming to me today, to break security protocols that guard banking and energy and
Yeah.
everything, um, and that they're putting the brakes on it and releasing it a little bit at a time. OpenAI seems to be wanting to prepare people emotionally for it, and they seem to launch or to preview things like Sora, the video creation software, and give it some time to sink in and to do some regulation. So I am guardedly, now it could just be BS, that they're just giving it lip service, but enough of them, enough of the leaders seem to be concerned, sober-minded, and not just, out to to sell the perks of it. Do you have a similar observation, or
Um,
do you think I'm being uh, fooled?
I think you're on the right track. And I also think there's another side of that. I'm pretty much an optimist for the most part in general, but the other side of that is that's we have the larger players here that are doing AI, but it's at this point it could be someone in their basement creating their own AI. I mean, this is a world we live in where tech and the capabilities of building this just take time, a little bit of money, not believe it or not, it's not a large amount of money now to expand it and to really make it um, in mass use. Yes, that takes obviously a lot of money. Um, but I think just like anything, when you give someone a new toy, who is playing with? Let's look again. We'll go back to the past because that's where we learn, right? Go back to the past. What was one of the most popular toys 50, 60 years ago? A BB gun, right? And when you look at that example, we say, okay, here's a toy. Yes, it's a gun and it does shoot. Here are the protocols, here are the safety measurements, but who's using it, right? Is it an 8-year-old? Is it a 20-year-old? Is it a 45-year-old? It still depends on the person, right? And I think with the larger players, I am seeing a little bit of a um, safety practices being implemented, thankfully, on some of what I know. Of course, we don't know all the players. Uh, I am happy about that, but again, the toy's already out there, right? Like the BB gun's already delivered. So I would have hoped there'd be a little bit more education, background, a little bit more information on what this is, how to use it, because my college students, we have this discussion in our class. Let's try ChatGPT, and they always ask me every semester when we use it, should you be teaching us this? And I said, well, why shouldn't I? And we have that whole discussion because I like to have the discussion about it. I said, well, isn't this used for cheating? I said, depends on the person, right? So I show them, one, we talk about that, the discussion of using ChatGPT, for example. Well, if I'm asking you to cite resources, does ChatGPT cite resources? No, it doesn't. So are you going to hand in that paper with resources that are coming from wherever they may be pulled from? So, okay, so we start that discussion. The idea that I introduced to my college students is to use it more as an editing tool, because here is the biggest reason why. Because when they graduate and go to a job, most people, a good amount of people are using ChatGPT or some type of AI in their job, right? So in my classes, I feel I should at least start to introduce them, give them that safety on that BB gun, help them understand what this is. Not that I'm a pure expert in AI, but help them understand what this is, what the tools are, what the resources are, and how you could use this to be proficient, but not also be using this maybe to plagiarize or to be lazy in the work. So again, everything in that realm can be a resource. And I want students to understand what their resources are. I'm a resource. Their peers in the class are resources, right? We have resources around campus. But at the same time, this resource now that is coming out needs to be understood and needs to be examined a little bit more. So going forward in a work environment, a lot of people I know use them to write reports, but they're editing them. Again, where is that information coming from? At least if you do a search on the internet, you can understand if this is peer reviewed, you can understand where the source is coming from. You can even see the author most of the time. You could understand the biases in it, right? But right now, when you do a ChatGPT, it's coming from all these different resources right there.
Mhm.
So just in that example, you see the pitfalls and the opportunities. You see obstacles and opportunities right there. So again, we need to understand that this is a resource and AI will continue to grow in our daily lives. But ChatGPT, for example, if managed, if understood a little bit better, I think could be advantageous. But again, whose hands is it in? You know?
Yeah. Um, Back to the the caution that some of the leaders appear to be voicing, so that I'm not coming across as Pollyannish. They are in a competition for the most important technology, perhaps in our lifetime, and to develop AGI. There is that race, and the first one to get there is going to benefit. So, and there are trillions of dollars at stake. So um, uh, I'm not putting my head in the sand about it. Um, and let's talk about uses. Let's take it to the student level, at whatever level, elementary to college. It's going to be valuable. Obviously, the use case that's for the most part not allowed and is problematic is write me an essay on Ulysses S. Grant. And even if you ask it to cite sources, the last time I asked it to, it gave me a great bibliography, but none of the links were accurate. It was all bogus. And great names of books and publications, and none of it was real. And I understand several lawyers have gotten popped for citing cases that don't exist in their briefs. So let's talk about some of the use cases that are not acceptable and will not be acceptable. And I think we mentioned just having it write a paper about a topic, and the problems that can come with that, in addition to plagiarism. Um, but let's talk about, well, what are some of the other use cases that you suspect will not be allowed? Maybe with math. Uh, what do you think is going to not ever be allowed in the classroom?
Well, so with AI, you have the opportunity to, we also did this when we were talking about AI. We didn't just use ChatGPT. We used the idea to create artwork, which I think, and you can do music too. So I had the class for just a couple weeks ago in my summer term, had the class. We went to one of the free music creators, and they picked a genre, they picked a tempo, they picked a time frame. I had them in teams, each group picked one. And, they couldn't hear or listen to it before. So each team picked one. And it was a great discussion because we were discussing, one, is this good? And that's subjective. So they would listen to what they picked. It was, oh, that's terrible. Or, oh, that's so cool. Oh, I would listen to that. So, they're getting involved. We're getting them interactive. But then we had a discussion on, well, is this art? And that was just a great discussion because it went all different directions. Yes, no, kind of. Well, I guess it depends. So, we had this great discussion on me pushing buttons based on what they said, even if they're pushing the button. And did I just create art? Did I just create a song? Technically, I created a song. Did I create a song from scratch? Was it my creativity? Did I do much? No. So we had a deep discussion on that. I think that was invaluable because any experience that you have in a learning environment, even if it's negative, unfortunately, still has an opportunity for some type of learning, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you hear some of the most famous people in the world say, oh, I failed 100 times, finally got it right 101, right? So there's a learning process in any type of learning environment, again, even if it's positive or not positive. But with that experience, just playing around with a free website to create music, the students started to understand, okay, maybe we need to take this with a grain of salt. Maybe this is fun. Maybe it's a toy. Maybe we could just play around with this, but I can't really become, a musician on this. But with that also said, you'll look at professional musicians and they maybe use some type of AI, but they absolutely use technology. They're using soundboards, they're using music that's not theirs and bringing it in. They're using different modes to tempo, to adjust the tempo up and down. So in that form, it's a great discussion because I think we're reaching one of the biggest gray areas of AI is education. Now, in the education world with my colleagues, there's huge discussions on when it's appropriate, if it's appropriate at all to use it, in what environment, what classroom, what ages, what lesson. And again, that becomes a little subjective. There may be policy in that, some schools may not allow it, some schools may really push it. So what you're going to see is a rapid advancement, not just in AI, but you're going to see the rapid discussion on when, where, how, and why to use it.
Mhm.
I think with my college students, again, these are young adults. They are already using some of these in different aspects. Some of them have used ChatGPT because, again, we talk about this and we get down to the deep roots of it. Some have used ChatGPT in their previous classes, and we discussed why, how you're using it. Again, I pretty much implore them to use it as an editing tool after you've written the paper, after you've gotten the citations. But moving on from that concept, where it's going to become in the college sector and the education sector, I think you asked for one of the issues with it. I think one of the wider issues is deep fakes, 100%. I think those are just there's no need for that. There's no absolute, there's nothing positive about that. Not one that I can think of. Maybe some of the viewers could find something, but I have no positive aspects of where a deepfake could help. Um, we're seeing this in scam artists and scamming quite a bit, and they're taking that to the next level. So that's one of the things that the powers that be, that the managers and people who do the oversight on this really need to understand. It's already out there. It's already happening quite a bit. You know, 15, 20 years ago, we used to get the robocalls, right? And that was kind of an early form in a way of AI. Now it's becoming not a computer voice, it's becoming a voice that sounds just like a common person, you know. Um, so it's just moving these things further along, making everything a little bit more real. You'll look at people with AI, or excuse me, AI generated humans, and having to take a second look. Wow. At first I thought that was a real human. So the advancement, again, we're looking at that so quick. It's happening so quickly. And I think there are a lot of positives, but I really am hoping that the young generation that grew up with technology, grew up with phones, grew up with internet, computers in their house. I'm hoping that there's just more information, more awareness. You know, there should be a whole class on this in high school, not AI, but the awareness of AI, teaching AI. What is it? Like the resources. I have my college students come in here. Some have used it, some have not. Some are pro AI, some are not. But again, going back to that example of the BB gun, it has to come with safety regulations, it has to come with awareness, and it has to come with some type of structure that's there, or some type of guardrail, or else it's just going to be all over the place. And we learn this again. We learn this from internet. We learn this from social media with bullying, and the capacity that everyone has this ability, and it's a great ability to connect, to connect with people in a certain way. But with all of those comes the downfall of where are we seeing the issues. And that's why I was really hoping before AI got such big power, and we know it's going to be big. We know, I mean, there's no stopping it. I was just hoping, and I'm still hoping, I'm still optimistic that there will be more information and awareness for people, you know, and that's where I think we could be really, not just the powers of the people who are controlling this. I think there needs to be that mediary, whether it be a teacher, a parent, some type of, maybe a community organization that's providing this awareness and what this is about. I think that's so needed. And that could be something Thrive could do really well. Maybe bring in an expert person like, so what is AI, right? And we kind of have an idea what it is overall as a society, but what are the obstacles? What are the opportunities here?
I had a great use case just the other night. I couldn't sleep. I have an app that I wanted to create for Thrive, actually. And so I started to type in the parameters and just have a conversation. It was in ChatGPT. Okay, here's what I want to accomplish. How would you set that up in software conceptually? And it gave me some ideas. And then there were some things that were contrary to what my purpose was. I don't remember the details, but so I said, well, what about this? And it goes, you're absolutely right. Here's what you can do to counter that problem. And it redesigned it. Then I saw another couple of things and had another couple of features that I wanted to add. And it did that. And then I said, is there any, so it pretty much gave me the parameters of an app that I would need to create. I didn't ask it to code it, but I could. And then I said, is there anything that's off the shelf that already exists that could do this functionality? And it gave me two or three options. One of them was $79 a month as a subscription, and I am checking it out. But look at that. I think that's a great use case, is having it uh, answer questions. I'm not a developer. I've never written a line of code, so I wouldn't be able to just create the outline of the structure. And it's coaching me. I'm interacting with it. And then it gave me a resource that possibly could work, saving me thousands, if not 10,000s of dollars. Not that I would pay that, but in development fees.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a really good interactive case study, and I think it could be valuable. And um, let's say somebody doesn't want to learn to code; they're a right brain person, not left brain. Then I could have said, "Okay, code this for me in whatever language you need to," and it could have created it from there. So, what do you think about that? And I also use it as a brainstorming tool, and it really
Yeah.
opens up my mind to possibilities. I'm a marketer in my business, and occasionally I'll say, "Okay, here's the location, and it's going to be a business that does this. Give me some creative and compelling names for possible names for that business." So I
Yeah.
use it a lot to brainstorm, and I may not get the answer I want, but it's giving me something close that I can then use. What are your thoughts about that in education?
Well, so let's go back again we'll go back to the internet, for example. So everything's about accessibility, right? We have a phone, we have internet. Things are just more accessible than they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. If you use the internet, for example, 20 years ago, it was a very specific group of people who could develop a website. Companies came on, they gave the common person who hasn't had all that coding or website development skills to basically build their website. So now most people could do their website, or at least a structure, an outline of their website within a day, even less than that, right? As a marketer, you probably know that there's websites and there's platforms now that can help you build a website very quickly. So if we move into the accessibility part of AI, ChatGPT is a good example of like the accessibility. It's fairly easy to get the kindergarten level aspects, and then you can build from there. But with the accessibility of that also comes, again, those parameters. Where are you taking it to? What do you need? What is your goal for this, right? So one of the things I think in the education environment is, what is the goal? Are you trying to finish a paper? Are you trying to brainstorm? Are you trying to make the paper sound just a little bit more professional, which I don't have a problem with as a professor, because that's a resource. Um, are you trying to find, like you said, trying to find names for something? What is the goal here? And I think, again, depending, as we mentioned earlier, who's using it, right? Whose hands are typing, what's going on in their brain, what's their goal? I think that's going to be the big part in the education piece. I mean, we know this is here, right? The fastest growing job in America right now is not AI development. Do you know what it is? It's the management of AI and tech. It's a data technician, growing at 18%. So it's one of the fastest growing jobs in the US. You do not need a college degree. You do need, I think, a certificate. You do need some training. Do not need a college degree. Can be upwards to close to six figures, if not more. So it's the people managing the tech. It's not even the developers. Of course, that's probably a smaller group of very skilled people, but it's the managers of all the warehouses that have to hold all the energy. It's the managers of the people who have to hold the key to if something goes down.
Data center managers.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I was reading something recently about a warehouse in Virginia that has 10,000 units going at all the time, powering. And if you think about it now, it's not just powering the internet, it's powering crypto mining, it's powering AI, it's powering different forms of technology. You also have, of course, the cell phone towers. All of these tech pieces that someone built and created, now what do they have to do? They have to be managed and sustained. And that's why it's one of the fastest growing jobs in the whole country. And you're going to see that expand. You're going to see that expand quite a bit. In Florida, another example I like to use is solar. I'm a big advocate of solar. Why not? We live in the Sunshine State in Florida. There are people who create that, who build that, that design it. Wonderful creation, in my opinion. But again, who manages it, right? So all of these new advances that were coming into our everyday lives as people who use them, maybe we take part in that, such as, we all have cell phones, whether you have solar or not, that's different. But there is a huge workforce that has to manage all of this tech and all of this data. And I think for younger students and even for adults, understanding that things are going to break, things are going to go down, things are going to be fixed eventually, but understanding that that's going to be where I think a lot of us hesitate and have some issues as an everyday society. What happens when cell phone service goes out, right? What happens when your internet's down? How are we as a society really relying, at what capacity are we relying on this? And I won't say too much, but what capacity, at what level are we relying on all of these things for our everyday lives, right?
Yeah. Well, Harris, this has been great. I really appreciate you being back on, and let's make a pledge to talk in 6 months, a year at most, because it's going to be dramatically a different situation. How
Yeah.
can people reach you if they'd like to reach out to you and have a conversation or engage you with your not-for-profit?
Yeah. So our organization's RAD, R-A-D, radschools.org. And they can reach me at Harris, Harris, at radschools.org.
Great. Well, thanks again so much. It's an interesting topic to me, fascinating, and
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what the world holds for us as the next chapter. So thanks again. Thanks everybody for tuning in to the Thrive Co-Living Communities podcast. If you like the episode, please click the like, subscribe, thumbs up, and you'll get more of the same and different, but just as good. Thanks again, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for joining us for another great episode of the Thrive Co-Living Communities YouTube podcast. To learn more about our mission and how you can support our vision of creating co-living communities worldwide, please visit us at thrivecolivingcommunities.org. To receive advanced viewings of our podcast and other exclusive content, find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Thrive Co-Living Communities. You can also learn more ways to support our mission in the show notes below. Amazon Smile, GoFundMe, Kroger, and our own Thrive Gear store, where you can buy t-shirts, hats, and many other items. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.